Alright, so it's been a little while since I provided an update on my Rockcrawler build and what I've been up to. So we've been super busy lately. We've been doing a fair amount of rock crawling, getting out over Memorial Day weekend, had a really nice long weekend. Unfortunately, I blew up my front ring and pinion, so I'm waiting on some parts. I'll put a new one in for our next trip. We're going to be going again here soon, so I need to be ready for that. Other things we've been super busy with, the kids are in softball right now, so we've got that a couple nights a week. Soccer season's over, but now it's softball season. And Emily is also doing 4-H dog agility, which takes a couple nights a week as well. So between trying to keep this thing on the trail and do a few wheeling trips here and there, I haven't been working on my new Rockcrawler build as much as I'd like to, but I'm chipping away where I can. So one thing I wanted to talk about today is building Drivelines. So I like to build my own Drivelines for Rockcrawlers just because they get expensive after a while. After you destroy several different Drivelines and you have to pay a Driveline shop to build your Drivelines, the price adds up really quick. So what I do is I save all my old Driveline parts. I save all my yokes and slips and such, because these are the most expensive parts of a Driveline. The tubing itself isn't very expensive. For example, this is 90 wall tubing. This is what like the Driveline shops like to use. And this is one of the last Drivelines I got built by a shop. And the problem with this 90 wall is as soon as you tap into a couple rocks, you're already denting it. So once Driveline's dented like that, then it fails way easier. So what I like to use is 120 wall. I just order 120 wall to build my Drivelines with, and that's always worked great. So what I do is I order all my parts and then start putting my Driveline together. If you order them right size, they should basically press into each other. When you're reusing old Driveline parts, sometimes you got to clean up the welds and stuff and try and get it as close as you can. And then what I do is I use my dial indicator to try and get them as straight as I can. Now when I say as straight as I can, I mean straight as I can for a Rockcrawler, maybe not for a Jeep going 90 miles an hour down the interstate. So it works just fine for rock crawling, because the truth is probably this first or second trail out, these Drivelines will have scratches and start to look like this. It doesn't take long at all for me to start to destroy a Driveline. However, as long as it's not getting all dented and stuff, I'm not too worried about it. So more than likely, but anyway, in an off-road application, that always seems to work just fine. It's super hot out today, so I'm kind of hot and sweaty and trying to work in here. It's like one of the hottest days of the year so far, and so I got my window air conditioner going. I got it turned off right now so I can actually hear when I'm talking. The first thing I'm going to start with is the piece that goes from the transfer case up to the front axle, and this is a two-piece Driveline. And so what I do is I order a kit from Wide Open Design. It comes with this carrier bearing and a yoke. First I'm going to weld this piece onto this carrier bearing, and I'm going to have to get the carrier bearings out of there before I permanently weld it so I don't smoke the bearings. And then it's going to bolt to this, and this will weld to the frame right there. And then this is the front piece for the Driveline. It goes like this all the way to the front Driveline, and then I have a slip yoke here that presses into this, and basically that's the anatomy of a two-piece Driveline. So I now have this cut to size. This end's welded, this end is not welded. I'm just going to put 4 tack welds around this so I can adjust it to get it exactly where I need it. So what's next? Then I'm going to put a U-joint in right here, and that's still kind of hot. I'm going to put a U-joint in and then drop it into place exactly where I want to put this. So I've got my driveline in there. It's all in there. And tightening everything up. And I've got my dial indicator there. And what I do is I spin my driveline around looking for the high spot. And then once I find the high spot, I just give it a little tap until I can get it around to as tight a tolerance as I can get it. So I've got the suspension fully drooped out right here. And we follow it up all the way to right there. The issue, it's okay right here, drooped out, but when this side compresses, this driveline gets up into this upper link. So what I need to do is lower this down just a little bit. But I can't lower it down too much because then it'll hit right there. So, well, let's see what we come up with. I have to take a little bit more off this plate so that I can lower this driveline a little bit. I'm sweating like crazy, and I'm making subtle adjustments to try and get that driveline to fit just right, and so that it's not going to hit anything. And so I'm trying to avoid it from hitting the links, and I'm trying to avoid it from getting too much bind on the U-joint, and just making sure that it clears everything, because this is so important to get this part right now so they don't have an issue while out on the trail. So I just cut off a little bit of this, about a 1/4 inch. Now it's sitting lower, sitting in a better spot. Going to tack weld it back in place and then hook it back up and see what it looks like. So here we are, drooped out, and it's not hitting anything. It's very close, but it's not hitting. So that's with the suspension fully drooped out. Now the final check is to stuff the one side, stuff each side, and we'll see if anything hits then. This is a 2-inch driveline. I thought it would be skinny enough, but it's just slightly too thick. When I fully flex the suspension out, what's happening is that it's slightly touching the upper control arm. So I had to take a step back and think about it, and I decided to steal the one off my other Rockcrawler. That's a different type driveline. It's a long spline type driveline. So this is what I had to do to make it fit. Basically, I bottom this shock out and I droop the other side out fully. And what was happening is this driveline right here was, the thicker driveline was hitting that upper control arm. After I put this skinnier driveline in, I now have just enough clearance at full flex that the driveline's not going to hit the upper control arm. It's close, but close will be just fine. Not ideal, but everything on these things is close. That's just the way it goes. There's just not a lot of room, so that's how I make sure in a full flex situation that driveline's not going to hit the control arm. So we'll go over here to the other side and see this shock is fully maxed out, and we'll look at the driveline quick. And it sure gets close to that upper link, but it's not going to touch the upper link, so we're good to go. Now, if it does start to get a little too close, I can always make my limit straps just a hair shorter, just to make sure it's not an issue. But with the shocks fully flexed out, it's going to work. So what I'm going to do is now I can kind of start to weld in the carrier bearing portion of the 2-piece driveline and get that put in place, since it's going to work where it's currently at. So this is fully drooped out right here. So this shock is fully extended, the other shock, and those are really long shocks. I really wasn't planning on using these, but it'll work. So right now that driveline, now that's fully drooped out, it has plenty of clearance, but it's at like the limits of what the U-joints can handle. Basically it gets to the point where the U-joints can kind of start binding into each other, which is fine. I'm going to limit it just short of that anyway. So that's some of the challenges when you get into crazy long shock links, is once again getting super high angles on your drive lines. This drive line I had already clearanced some from my other Rockcrawler. So here I set my dial indicator, I spin the drive line, and I look for the high spots and then try to get it as straight as I can. So I just wanted to summarize everything in this video real quickly. So this is my current Rockcrawler with the long spline drive shaft in it. If I shake it like that, you can see a slight amount of movement. That's the way that this drive shaft showed up, and it's an off-road drive shaft. And so no matter how much I tried, well, all of these parts just press together when you order it that way. But no matter how much I tried with the dial indicator, you can only get it so straight when there's that much movement in those splines. So the issue that's been is when I'm in 4 high and I'm going fast down a 2-track road in 4 high in like 3rd gear in my transmission, and I let off the throttle, you can hear that kind of vibrate back and forth and shake a little bit. And so this new shaft that I built right here, this is the same diameter, this is 1.5 inches, but it's a lot lighter. It's 1.5 inches, 120 wall, but it's much lighter because it's not solid steel. This other one's solid steel, this is hollow. It's much lighter, and the splines right here have no play in them, so you don't hear any of that play. So this new one I built is going in my old Rockcrawler, and this old one is going in the new Rockcrawler because that new Rockcrawler isn't going to go very fast. And at lower speeds, that thing's fine. It doesn't rattle, doesn't make any noise. So that's my plan moving forward. Also, I wanted to provide a quick sneak peek at the Rockcrawler that I've been working on. And so my next week's video is going to talk a little bit more about the sheet metal. That's just sitting on there. I don't have my holes drilled in it and stuff, and I got some more trimming I need to do. But just kind of a sneak peek real quick. Same with getting the floor panels and everything in place. I'm using all 1/4 turn fasteners once again so that it's quick and easy to remove. Also, I have the shocks in there, and the springs that are on here. The springs are way too stiff because they were on a Jeep. These shocks were on a Jeep a long time ago that was a lot heavier than this. So as soon as I start to pick it up, the springs barely compress. So what I'm going to do for now is remove the upper springs and then just set the lowers at the ride height that I'm looking for. And then I can order some new springs in the future. So that's where I'm at. Everything's coming along. I like the way that it's looking. I also pulled everything out of here. Well, everything but the motor, I should say. And then I painted it, painted the axles, and I put it all back together. And so now everything's in there, the transmission with the torque converter, the transfer case, everything's actually, I'm bolting it all in there for the long run. So that's after I get it all painted up, bolt it all in there, and gonna start putting it together for the last time.